Stumble forward, stumble forward. The 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 stumble.
I'd like to welcome Linda Manzer to the Stumble Forward. Linda is a Canadian master luthier renowned for her archtop, flat top, and harp guitars. Her instruments are owned and played by the likes of Pat Metheny, Bruce Cockburn, Paul Simon, Stephen Fearing, and Carlos Santana. She emanates from a very interesting and influential Canadian guitar-building cohort and was appointed as an officer of the Order of Canada in 2023. Please welcome Linda Manzer. Linda.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for that nice intro.
Oh, well, hey, I'm just quoting from some of the, most obvious details of a very interesting life it's an interesting life you're living, isn't it?
Oh, I would absolutely. Who knew that being a guitar maker could take me down this path? And I still wake up every morning, with fire in my belly and want to make guitars. So I'm a happy camper.
Yeah, that's a big deal to say that you wake up every morning with fire in your belly for what you're doing, because this is how many decades now for you?
5.
Yeah,
5 decades.
I mean, I will say that I even bumped into a little bit of career malaise this year. And I'm 25 years in. I mean, there must have been some ups and downs, or have you maintained this sort of positivity throughout the entire 50 years?
I wouldn't say downs as much as there was a certain point when I got a little overwhelmed because I became kind of well known about 25 years ago, and I got a lot of people approaching me and talking to me, and being a guitar maker is a very solitary thing. You spend pretty much all day by yourself working, and it's very grounding, but having a lot of input from clients and at some point, there was a lot of, I had to adjust to how much noise there was around me. And now I think I'm, I think that came and went. And I'm my life is more calm now. So, although, except for the Order of Canada has kind of kicked the can a little bit, that created a little bit of a buzz for sure.
What an interesting honor. I mean, I think back 25 years, you say, so that's about when you got famous. I'll give you, here's why I know you and why I understand your fame and your importance. So I was a Bruce Cockburn fanatic as a kid. Absolutely fanatical. All I wanted to be was Bruce Cockburn. So I was on I quit high school and I was touring Canada in a church musical. I had saved up all my money as we toured across Canada, because somebody in the musical had an uncle in Victoria who said they knew Jean Larrivée. And I was like, okay, so what do you think if I save up my pennies? Am I going to get to meet this Jean Larrivée? Which it all ended up working out in the end. And I met Jean and bought a guitar from him probably in around 1992 or 93. And I would have been 17 or 18 years old. So my love of Cockburn and that kind of extremely proficiently built high-end player's guitar leads me to the next guitar that I see Bruce playing for a good 20 years to today, if not, is that famous green cutaway. Who made you famous? Was it Bruce? Was it Pat Metheny? 25 years ago, you must have released a guitar that changed your life. What guitar was that? What artist was that? How did that happen?
I would say the musician who changed my life was, the first kind of famous person I made a guitar for was one of my very first guitars was Carlos Santana.
Neat.
And yeah, it's just, I knew his drummer and the drummer's wife, and they bought it for Santana as a present. So he mentioned me in a guitar article in 1982, I think it was. So that kind of got I was off to the races with that. And then Gordon Lightfoot got one of my guitars through famous Ring Music in Toronto. And then what happened was I was a huge fan of Pat Metheny, and he bought a guitar, or I saw him at a show, and that started a relationship where I was building about one guitar a year for him. And so he liked talking about me in interviews. And I would say he was the one who got me kind of the most well known internationally. And I think the guitar that, sort of turned everything around, or was a game changer for me, was the Picasso guitar, which I made for Pat, which has 42 strings, 3 necks, 2 sound holes, a couple of doors. It's like a car,
Yeah,
and all it's missing is 4 wheels, and a very complicated electronic system that was done by somebody else. And he started playing that all over the place, and that, little did I know when I made that would become the guitar I would become kind of most famous for. So,
please.
And Bruce, of course, Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce, of course. So if you could, for even a few seconds, shed any humility, and who are the most famous guitar builders in the world? Like, you must be up there. What names? I can think of Larrivee. Grit Laskin is another name that comes to mind that I used to hear when I was in the Toronto scene. Who are the names? Who are these people who are building these sort of high impact, high intensity instruments for these high impact, high intensity artists? Who are these people? Are you at the top?
I would say I'm at the top. Yeah, I have a pretty famous roster of clients. You named most of them, I think, in the intro. But you're right that there's a Canadian guitar scene that's just amazing. And there's Grit Laskin, as you mentioned. So these are kind of my litter mates. We were apprentices at the same time. David Wren, Tony Duggan Smith, Sergey DeYoung. Those are the people I started with. George Gray. But also there's people like in Canada, Shelley Park in Vancouver makes Django Reinhardt guitars.
Mm-hmm.
And most recently, actually, I don't know when this podcast will be released, but this week on the Grammys, Tracy Chapman played a guitar. And there's this huge buzz right now because people found out who made that guitar. And it was a friend of mine in Calgary, Judy Threet. And she made that guitar 23 years ago. And Tracy Chapman shows up on the Grammys playing this guitar. And what a beautiful, cap to her career for Judy to have this happen. That's the Canadian builders. In America, in the United States, there's a lot of really well-known builders that, there's so many of them. Immediately comes to mind Ken Parker, John Monteleone, Tom Rebecki. Oh boy, I'm going to be in so much trouble because I'm going to forget a whole bunch of people. Steve Grimes in Hawaii. These are all people that are kind of my peers that we've all known each other our entire careers. And I wouldn't hesitate to pick up the phone and call any one of them and ask them for help or advice. In fact, I did actually this year. I called most of those people to get some help with my Sunflower guitar project that I was trying to get into the hands of musicians all over the place. That's a whole other subject, but
is it a competitive universe? I mean, I'm guessing because you're building high-end instruments and there's a high-end ticket, there's a price associated to that. So maybe the audience is somewhat limited for your guitars. It's a supportive community, but I'm sure everybody is interested in the business that everybody else is doing. Does that sound right?
Well, you're right. I'm in direct competition with all of these people. We are vying for all the same clients. But there's this, I only make about a dozen guitars a year at the very most, usually more like 6. So
Mm-hmm.
I only need to find 6 people a year sort of keep me in business. And that's, in the world of guitar players, that's not very much. So there's room for all of us. But the other thing is as I said, we work alone. So we really need each other. That was something I found out with the Larrivee apprentices, is that when I left Larrivee, I was an apprentice with both Larrivee and James D'Acquisto in Long Island. But as soon as I finished working, David Wren and Grit Laskin gave me wood so that I could start my first guitar that was nice and dry and really high quality. So they welcomed me into the community. And in fact, I'm having lunch with both of them in a few weeks, and with some other guitar makers. We all hang out and we share. It's like if we have problems like, lacquer problems or glue that's gone off and we need to know, or something like that, we call each other and we help each other. We're what's that expression? You probably know it. The one where,
oh
yeah, cooperation. No, when all the boats rise together or something.
Yes, yeah. Rising tide lifts all boats. Yes, yes.
Thank you so much. See,
Yeah, yeah.
you're the wordsmith.
Well, I did see the Group of Seven Guitar Builders show in at Trafalgar Square in London, England. I feel like I texted you
Wow.
when I was there, and it was very impressive and a real surprise to walk into Canada House and see, voila, here was your work, and it was being celebrated in England. And I mean, it's
That was a trip. Yeah.
it- and now
It,
you were
well,
all
the
sorry, go ahead.
Well, the Group of Seven project started at the McMichael, and it was there, it's supposed
Right.
to be there for 6 months, and it was such a success they extended it for another 6 months. And then that was like the melding of music and art and all this. It was just such a successful show, I think. And then they sent it to Canada House in London, England. It was supposed to be there for a few months, and it was so successful they doubled the length of time it was there, which was kind of cool. And I went over and gave a talk, and all the guitars were there, and it was, I mean, what a huge honor that was.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's funny you say about this was an opportunity to mix art with the guitar building, because I've been thinking, I was listening to a few of your interviews, and I was really I was at a years ago I was at uh, a museum in Paris, and there was a furniture section of the museum, and I was stunned at how taken by the furniture section I was. And it opened me up to realize that I was actually, in terms of all of the art modalities, I was probably quite drawn to furniture because I'm drawn to functional art. And I think that a pop
Mm.
song in many ways is a construction. It's a piece of symmetry, and then the art gets added in. And that's why certain songwriters sort of have that appeal when you add art into something that has a technological or engineering component. It comes from, it's a craft person's job, but it's also an artist's job. And then when I was thinking about what you do, even including figuring out what wood to use, like the different hats you must wear to create a guitar, from you being an artist to you fulfilling, you know, being able to kind of come up with a guitar in the end due to technical know-how in your shop. I mean, it's an engineering job, it's an art job, it's a lot of things. Am I out to lunch, or is that how it really is?
No, it is a combination of art, music, function, but you have to make something that stands up to the 200 pounds at least of pressure that go onto a guitar neck, and the guitar is trying to rip itself apart. But you also have to make it so sensitive that it sings. So there's this delicate balance of balancing the construction of something like that. A chair doesn't have to sound good, but a guitar, but you have to be able to sit on it.
Yeah.
So you kind of add to that though, but the chair has to sound good. So that's kind of what we do. It's so, I'm sure there are chairs that sound good actually.
I'll bet.
But yeah, but that's the thing I love about it. It combines all those disciplines, science, function, art, and ultimately, what I'm building is a tool for someone like you. So my goal is actually to make something that inspires you to create what you do. I'm kind of the middle person, in the middle of the function of it. It's not done when I'm through with it. It's on a journey with you. And I always keep that in mind, that it's not really my guitar, it's your guitar.
Right. Which I guess, man, there's so much I could lead. But I guess my next question is, because I'm in the middle of mixing a record for an artist right now, and I'm the one who's putting in the dozens and dozens of hours to bring this mix to fruition. And they're the one who gets to listen to that 3.5 minute mix and sort of flippantly respond, after I've put in all those hours. How closely are you working with the client? Is it a hands-off situation, i.e., when you hire Linda Manzer to make a guitar, you sit down and shut up in the corner and you get that guitar when it's done? Are they there as a companion to that? Is it a collaboration? Like, how does that look? Because I can imagine you get clients where it's like, I wish I'd never signed on for this, but maybe I'm wrong.
I've learned how to manage those types of people actually, but usually at this point, they trust me and they walk away and they just let me do it. But you can just tell they want to reach through the computer and, well, you're not like that part's not quite right, or send me more pictures, and I don't like to send pictures when I'm in the middle of, because it's like watching how the sausage is made, right? It's not pretty until it's done. It doesn't look so great.
Yeah.
So I kind of try to keep the reveal until they have it in their hands and open the guitar case.
Yeah.
But yeah, people have no idea how much work goes into the smallest detail. And then, for instance, one of the things that I have the most trouble with, I find the most challenging is lacquer. And if you get one speck of dust and you don't catch it, it's hours sometimes to get to correct it. It's just unbelievable how much time it takes. And some people will notice that speck of dust.
Yeah.
Some people won't. I had a guitar sent back once because I had a cat hair in it. And I thought that improved the value of the guitar myself because my cat was awesome. But
Absolutely.
he didn't agree with me. But so I had to take the cat hair out. But I did.
It's my grandpa was a sort of a fine carpenter, and he had his motto for not showing work before it was finished was never show a job never show an unfinished job to an asshole, which, everybody's an asshole when they see an unfinished job because they're basically saying, well, why isn't this finished? And I get excited because I'm interested in ideas, and I sort of feel like I could show something half finished to somebody and they're going to be able to fill in the ideas, but not everybody can be relied on to see into the future in a way. A great artist like you, who I can imagine you have a finished picture in your mind when you're work. I mean, if you're doing 8 to 12 guitars a year, that means that this guitar is taking at least 6 weeks to build. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, longer. I mean, it's not 6 weeks start and finish. I have guitars in my shop that have been sitting there for over a year that are half built. And that's yeah, but I would say it takes about 100 hours to build a flat top and about 200 to build an arch top. And then on top of that, if there's anything like inlay or anything like that, that's totally on top of that. So, and electronics and it takes hours and hours and hours for sure. It's
Right.
and stuff, shit happens, right? You 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 forgot, you use the wrong. I don't even want to admit some of the stuff that happens because I'm going to scare my clients. But nothing bad happens ever.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I love the journey though. It doesn't. I mean, I don't care really how long it takes. I'm sure my clients do, but I love, the journey is the fun part for me.
Are you still learning?
Oh yeah, yeah. I would say I'm always learning how to fix my mistakes. And there's so many. You're working with a natural. Wood is like a natural substance, and each piece is got its own stuff going on, and you have to learn. You have to understand it as you're working with it. So I take my time. I take my time with each guitar to kind of get the vibe of the wood, how everything's going to go together. So you're right about I have to envision where I'm going with it, and that's inside my head, and I can't. That's a hard thing to convey to somebody that doesn't. Yeah, other guitar makers kind of get it, but you know, uh, yeah. What was the question?
I don't remember now, but I will say, so are you building from fresh designs every time, or is there a Linda Manzer base design that you sort of move like how from zero are you starting on each project?
There are probably about 10 models that I can make. They're all different sizes, like a sitar guitar, a cowpoke, which is what Stephen Fearing has, which is a bigger guitar.
Yep.
But the Manzer model is kind of one body shape. And then what I do is people tell me what they want. So I prepare the woods for that guitar. So each time that's different. And then the neck shape, they customize and they want it a certain way. And that's unique for that guitar. So there's a starting point where they're all kind of the same, but then they all go on their own journey. Each one about a third of the way in, they start to have their own pathway, and it's unique to the natural materials I'm using. So I just have to be on top of feeling that as I'm going along. That's my challenge. But yeah.
Is any of the process mechanized? Was any of the process mechanized? Is this all you and tools that you don't plug in building these guitars?
Oh, well, I've got lots of plug-in tools like bandsaws. I've got a lot of routers.
Yep.
I've got spindle sanders, buffing wheel, thickness sander joiner, um, drills, everything. I got a lot of electricity running through my shop.
But
But
the
I do
CNC machine is not is a I got your hands
my
cutting that stuff.
Yeah, there is a couple of things I do have CNC'd for me.
Hmm.
Like my logo, the handwritten Manzer at the top. I have somebody, a woman I know who does that in Maryland. And then recently, just to save my elbows and my hands, I've been having the backs of my archtops carved by CNC by a fellow in Michigan. Brian Gallup does that for me. He does an amazing job, and they're to my specs. I've designed it, but it
Right.
means that I don't have to, because it's that was just killing my elbows, and I was going to have to stop doing that because that's
Yeah.
really hard physical work. I used to do that entirely by hand.
I never
So
even considered that it would be a physically challenging job. Of course it would, because
yeah.
you're you're building these necks from a block, is that right? So it's chiseling. How does that happen? Is it
Yeah, I use rasps. So, for instance, a guitar neck starts off as a block of mahogany,
yeah,
and it's square dimensions. And what I do is I cut it down with like a bandsaw to close, but then I just take a rasp and I start rasping, and I can spend a whole day just carving one guitar neck. And by the end of the day, there's a pile of shavings on the floor. And as I get closer, then I start using sandpaper, and then often I walk away from it and come back to it because you lose your feel and you
yeah.
have to come back fresh. So that's why it takes so long, because you have to kind of walk away from it. Like you, for instance, Huxley, you probably have a particular neck shape that you love on a guitar. There's probably one guitar you pick it up and go, yeah, I love this one more than the rest. Am I right?
That is true. I mean, a guitar, as you know, there's a lot of there are guitars that make me feel cooler than others. Like I will say that my Paul Reed Smith is probably the guitar I that is the most easy to play. But it's not a guitar that makes me feel cool to be on stage for whatever reason. When I look down, if I'm playing that guitar on stage, it doesn't give me a sense of like, wow, I'm a cool rock and roller. Like when I look down at my mid 70s Les Paul, which is also a great player and a neck shape that I love. Um, I don't know if I have that level of intimacy. I feel like the guitar is a living item. I know that there are times if I've left a guitar out of the general playing cycle for a long time, I feel like it pokes at me, and then it's a problem guitar until I start playing it again, and then it starts to re-find itself as a more playable guitar. I find that the cycles and the life cycles of these guitars, um, they're moody because I think they're still alive more or less. And I also think that a guitar needs to spend some time with its player in order to start complying to the physics of the hand, especially the fret hand that is playing that guitar. Am I making sense, or do I sound like I'm a crazy person? Because really, I sometimes feel when I buy a new guitar, this guitar needs to start melding to me a little bit as my hand starts understanding how to work this particular instrument. Does this sound consistent with how you kind of look at this process?
You sound as crazy as I am. So yes, I agree with. I'm pretty convinced that guitars have I don't want to say soul, but there's something about the energy of guitars. I've been in a room with. I remember once I had to take a guitar back from somebody and fix it, and I felt like they were in the room with me for the first couple of days when the guitar came back. I really felt like they were standing watching me, and I felt like it wasn't my guitar, even though I made it. And then
Hmm.
I kind of pushed them out, and I pushed me back in. And I really did. It's a sort of a weird feeling, but I really felt like I did feel like there was there's aliveness to it. And I think, when a person's had a guitar for decades and playing it, their main guitar, there's it's infused with something. And I'm sure some scientist in 50 years is going to say, yes, we've got the vibometer here proving what Linda said 50 years ago. S- I don't know. There's something we don't know, but if I feel it. So yes.
In fact, I think I don't see how there couldn't be, with what we're starting to discover, how deep we go into physics now, and at the quantum level, I think life really is more magical and mysterious than we realize. And the sense that these instruments do take on a character or a personality. I do think my guitars get moody. The ones that don't get played, they get moody. they are become difficult to tune. The neck starts, it needs to be, somebody needs to sort the neck out again. Like it just starts to get a little bit grumpy just from lack of attention. And I have enough guitars that some do go unloved for a little while. And that relationship to guitars is different. My first instrument is drums, and I don't believe that I've had the same kind of relationship with the drum set that you have with that guitar. Now, the guitar is a machine, and it's a machine designed to play music, and it's a machine that lives against your body, and it's something that the musician is very, very intimate with, way more intimate than a drum set. Not only that, you're hitting drums. It's not an intimate activity, where guitar playing is far more intimate and
you put your arms around.
Yeah, exactly. You put your arms around the damn thing. Yeah, for sure.
And you pull it into your body, and it's very intimate. That's why I feel like it's really important when I'm building guitars. I try to. This is something Jimmy DeQuisto and I sort of disagreed on. He taught me how to build archtop guitars, but he felt that you should put all your energy, all your personality into each guitar, good, bad, ugly, everything. And I sort of feel that's not true. I don't want to put bad energy into my guitars. Because it's kind of like a sacred, my workbench is kind of a sacred space for me. And I want magic to happen on my bench. I want stuff to go together really well. I want everything to connect and glue together and be harmonious. Well, I'm talking to you about stuff I never talked to anybody about. Good on you.
That's great.
But it's really important to me that I think Tom Rebecki is another guitar builder friend of mine, and he considers his workshop his church. That's where he goes to that's his religion, is his workbench, is where he connects to whatever the greater thing is out there. And I kind of feel the same way, that it's almost like a sacred space for me, in my version of church. Well, I'll probably get in trouble for that one, but oh well.
Well, I mean, when you're building guitars for the likes of Bruce Cockburn and Pat Metheny, you're putting an instrument in the hands of two people. Just to talk about two of your clients, into the hands of very spiritually minded, and spiritually centered artists. Anyways, to me, these artists would find you in the sort of spiritual landscape of things because of the honesty that you would bring from that spiritual level to the build process. I don't see being interested in a hand-built guitar that doesn't have something, has it say esoteric or something connected to magic or some kind of a spiritual aspect to it. Why wouldn't you just go buy a D18 from Long McQuaid then? Like, where it's a quality built guitar, but it's not going to have that intimacy and that love and that possibly that sort of spiritual investment that you're making with each instrument. So to me, I'd be surprised if you said otherwise, to be honest.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because both of those people are, you're right, Pat and Bruce are both, each in their own different way, very, very connected and very spiritual. But they're also really technically, really fussy. I mean, I have to make sure I nail what they're looking for technically. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So I have to have those chops together as well.
How fascinating. Have there been awkward moments with some of these longtime clients where, jeepers, maybe I'm not just feeling this, or how does that play out?
There was only one. I've made the most guitars for Pat. And I've maybe 25 guitars I've made for him, and only one of them was a bit of it didn't quite work. In fact, what I did is I gave him two guitars. They both had very different features, and he'd asked for something specific. And so I gave him two options. And what it turned out was neither one of them quite nailed it, but it was a combination of the two that nailed it. So I went back and I made something that was exactly kind of in the middle of the two. And that was the one he chose. So that, I would say that was awkward, but it was a learning experience for me. And the other two guitars found homes. So
You know,
Nothing was lost.
I'm interested, if you don't mind, to off-road into slightly less spiritual climes, although maybe it is. But I'm interested in the work ethic and in the entrepreneurial spirit that leads from a Linda Manzer in the early 80s, who is part of this sort of cohort of guitar builders. Beyond your craftsmanship, your artfulness, your spiritual connection to the work you're doing, there's a work ethic. There has to be, and there has to be an entrepreneurial spirit that you may be hiding a little bit away for, for want to put your artistic face forward. But can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, you're running a business, and it's an international business with very high-minded, demanding clientele. Like, this is all very fascinating to me, because I feel like for solo people like you who are in a very rarefied place, your business acumen has to be in focus. Am I out to lunch on this?
No, I mean, it sort of happened on its own. I mean, I just make guitars and then sell them. And I have a price that over the years, it just, started. When I started, it was Bob Taylor actually who said, when he married his wife, he said, "Honey, you're, marrying me, you're signing an oath of poverty." And he ended up being a multimillionaire guitar builder. But I've always done it because I love it. And if the money went away, I would still do it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck. I'm a one trick pony sort of. But as far as the business goes, I at the beginning had stores selling my guitars because I wasn't really good at going, "This is a great guitar, buy it."
Right.
And so I let the guitars sell themselves. And then what happened was somebody like Pat Metheny would go and play on stage in front of thousands of people, and people would start asking, what guitar is that?" And that's how it happened. So they kind of, all these people went out and played my guitars, became my ambassador. And I basically, my price has always been whatever they'll sell for. If the price goes too high, nobody's going to buy them. So I've just inched my price up over the 50 years I've been building. And I'm not the most expensive guitar builder out there, but yeah, I am very expensive. But I've just not been, I think I've been kind of reasonable in my pricing, considering what I do and the number of hours. And I've people don't rip me off. They put a deposit on the guitar, and then when I finish making the guitar, they pay me the balance, and I hand them the guitar. And if they don't like it, I'll give them their money back. That's never happened. Thank you.
Wow.
But that's kind of it's pretty simple. I'm not a business genius, and I've had other people promoting my work, so that's actually made that helps a lot. So
Okay, so it's really, I mean, it's not like necessarily this is like a dark science or anything, but you make something so superior that the product sells itself, and those products that are so superior find the playership that's superior and in front of people, and those people see like I did, the likes of the Cockburns, Steve Fearings, and Pat Metheny's playing your instruments, and then more people become interested. Okay, well then let's flash forward a little bit to the work ethic. How many hours a day? What are your working hours? I'm a morning person. I always assume that working people are morning people. Are you in straight for hours? Are you in and out of the shop? How does it work?
well, I would say I work a little bit less than I used to. I'm trying to slow down a bit because, after 5 decades of it, there are other things to do in life. But look, I went skating yesterday.
Oh, how
It was only for an hour, and I only fell once. So, um, but it was, I work pretty hard. I think I'll go down. I like to binge work. So if I go down to the shop, which is just right behind me here, I will go down. I have a cup of coffee. About 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm in the shop working. I start by doing something fairly simple. So I just get the wheels greased. And then I start to do the stuff that's a little more challenging, the things I put off doing that I know I have to really dig in.
Mm.
And then I'll finish around supper time and stop. And that's, if I have a deadline, I will work till midnight. And I would work 7 days a week unless something interrupts me, like somebody drags me out of the shop to do something, or, there's some social event I want to go to, or, Yeah, I don't. I just work a lot. I would say I'm a bit of a workaholic. I think that helps to be successful.
Sure.
I think it helps a lot actually, because it's long hours. People just never know that I've spent 3 hours on some fiddly little tiny thing on their guitar, and but you got to do it. If you don't do it, if you don't put those hours in, then you don't get the best you can do. So
I even think of that in Bruce's green guitar with the cutaway. There's another sort of recess in the cutaway, like you flatten, if I'm not mistaken. I've never played his guitar, but from what I see in the cutaway, there's yet another comfort thing built in where you've sort of flattened the recess. There's a recess in there. Am I right? Because that to me,
I'm not sure. There is something I do like that. I'm not sure if Bruce's guitar has that.
or relief, maybe it's called. But I mean, I look at your guitar and I can see, knowing that I just put some shelves up last week and it took 3 days to do that. So I know how something like this could possibly go, and you have skills. So
I couldn't put shelves up.
it's interesting. Let's just quickly go back to something you said, because I would like to just look at what you said about the workaholic. I love excellence, and I love people who are programmed for excellence and who are sort of tuned into that frequency. In some ways, when I started to do this podcast, it was one of my little secret missions. I wanted to talk to funny people, drummers, and people who had a focus on excellence. And I know that, the concepts around work-life balance are something that get discussed. But I think for obsessives like you and probably like me, the idea of a work-life balance that's a confusing prospect when I'm not really interested in balance. I quite like the imbalance that I have that biases my work. I'm guessing you would harmonize with that idea.
Yeah. I don't think of it as work, actually,
Right.
in some ways. I mean, I have the discipline to go in and do parts of it that I don't enjoy doing so much, like polishing. I don't like polishing guitars. But for me, going down to the shop, like I say, I love going down there because it's a magic spot for me. Good things happen. I get to listen to music while I'm working. I get to glue stuff together and create stuff that other people like. I make people happy, and it's hardly work at all, really, for me. I'm so fortunate that I found this thing that I can do that I'm good at, and I became good at. Only, you become good at stuff if you work really hard. I think
Yeah.
that's the other thing. If you put in half time for this kind of job, you're not going to be a great guitar builder. You're going to be an okay guitar builder. You have to really dive in 150%, but the rewards are huge. So, I mean, I just, I get to, I get to hang out with people like you. I mean, I get to hang out with people who I consider the real artists, the ones who are actually making the music. That's my reward, is that I get to be part of that. I'm a failed folk singer, so this is my backup plan, and it's a pretty good backup plan. So,
That's all very interesting. I did hear the Cole's Notes version of the timeline. You were a Beatles fan, folk singer, and then I guess you were in art college, and you said you found yourself hanging out a lot in the workshop.
wood shop.
It was, and so how old were you when this eureka happened that maybe guitar building which should be the focus?
I was about 20. I was going to Nova Scotia College of Art and Design as a painter, and I did not enjoy being there at all. But I kept finding myself in the woodworking shop, and I was making a dulcimer, which I'd made several of them, and this was just something I was doing for fun. And that's when I decided to hunt for a teacher, and this for the internet, for fax machines, so everything was done by letter or phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard about this man, Jean-Claude Lervet, who was in Toronto, and I was living in Halifax going to art college, but I was from Toronto. So I kept calling him, and I basically bugged him until he said, he would hire me, or he would at least interview me. And when I walked into the shop in Toronto, I walked up the stairs, and David Wren was sitting on a bench,
Mm.
on a chair, and he was carving away at a classical guitar neck. The wood was streaming in through the wooden windows, and there was dust and a golden light. And I walked in, and as soon as I saw that, I thought, this is what I want to do. It's like a bell went off, exactly like I knew this is what I wanted to do. And that was I asked to be an apprentice, and he hired me. And that was the beginning of a 3.5 year apprenticeship with Larrivee, with people like David Wren, and then I got to know Grit Laskin and Sergei DeYoung, and we're all young, and it was kind of an amazing, amazing experience, to be honest. And they're still my friends to this day.
What about why was Larrivee the fulcrum for this? What was he? Did he innovate something? Like, if we were to look at a J45, a D18, which I would say are, I don't know, from my perspective, those are sort of some of the two most standard acoustic guitars that you can buy off the shelf. What was Larrivee doing that was different back then?
Well, he was in Canada. He was the only one. So if you wanted to learn guitar making, you
Yep.
had to apprentice, and he was the only person doing it. But what his background was classical, and
Right.
he had studied with a guy called Edgar Munch, who was a classical guitar builder. So his style was a very classical European steel string guitar, which didn't really exist. So he was a fan of Martin guitars, and he was aware of Martin guitars, but he made no attempt to copy them. He
Right.
actually designed this guitar based on basically what he learned from Edgar Munch. And then so he started out from the starting block having his own unique design that nobody else had done. It took a long time for the American market to recognize his guitars as as worthy, because the only thing that really counted was either Martin or Gibson in those days. So
Right.
it was an uphill battle for him to be accepted in that market.
Yeah.
And we were kind of in his slipstream, all of us builders. And he paved the way for all of us and opened the minds of players, particularly somebody like Bruce Cockburn was one of the first people to kind of cross over from the Martin mindset.
Yep.
And he supported Larrivee and all of us. He bought guitars from David Wren, from me, and he started out with Larrivee. That's where I met Bruce, was in Larrivee. I was terrified of him. He
Yeah.
walked up the stairs, and I was shaking.
Yeah. I mean, I've met him several times. I know he even stays with you or has stayed with you. I always say something ridiculous to Bruce whenever I see him. And as a fanboy, I still cannot steady myself to sound like an adult around Bruce Cockburn. But I just can't. I'm working towards it. I definitely will have myself together before he passes away. That's my goal. I gotta sit down with Bruce and not feel like a total idiot when I get up from the discussion. But I completely understand what you're saying.
I'm sure he loves you for who you are, exactly who you are. He's
That's I think that it's just me. But I can understand this nervousness. Anyway, what I wanted to say was just to quickly go back to this idea of the the tonal character of, let's say, the Martin or the Gibson. So I own a D35 and I own a J45. And when I strum that D35, I hear the records that the D35 was on, as if it was coming out of a speaker. The same with the J45. When I bought my Larrivee from Jean Larrivee in North Vancouver in 1992 or whatever that was, the second I played that instrument, I heard Bruce Cockburn's guitars. I heard those records. To me, it was such a clear, like, that sound was so obvious. It was so obvious what it was. And I think that if you have a guitar that speaks with such a clear tonality or timbre or whatever the technical word would be, you can start to sort of build a brand around this guitar identity. I owned my Larrivee for 30 plus years, and then honestly, I let it go, and it was a problematic guitar that I didn't have in my life anymore. And here's why. I found that I recorded that guitar. I started going into studios when I was a teenager, and I've recorded that guitar hundreds of times. And it's so clear. It is such a big presence. I found Larrivee guitars never sat in a mix in a way that if you just want a strummer in the background playing GCD, Larrivee wasn't the guitar that sat in the mix in the way a D18 would. That sort of, it's not meant to be the star player. And then I sort of felt like with the Larrivee guitars, I was trying the Cockburn style, the full 5 fingers, thumb playing bass, and the other 4 fingers trying to play melodies and chords. To me, these great guitars, your great guitars, they're meant for great players. Is that crazy to say that?
Um, well, I think the guitars have their own personalities. Kind of, there's kind of a world. Oh boy, there's a voice that Larravees have,
Yeah.
and Martins have, and mine have. Mine's probably very similar to the Larrivee because I studied with him and Grit Lask, and we all our guitars have different voices, and sometimes, and within that, my kind of circle of sound, there's a whole bunch of little subsets of that, like the baritone and sitar and everything. They all have different sounds, but they could identify, might have a particular sound. I've heard my guitars on speakers when I've gone into a store. Once that happened, and I recognized my own guitar, even though I had never heard the song before.
Wow.
Which kind of blew my mind because I didn't think it was that obvious.
Right.
And that's only happened once, so maybe that was an anomaly.
No,
But
that sounds reasonable to me.
But I mean, also certain guitars, some people aren't going to like how my guitars sound. And some people are going to just totally fall in love with it. It's such a personal thing. Like, I don't get offended if somebody picks up my guitar and doesn't connect with it because I know somebody else will. It's like, to your question. Yeah, Larrivee guitars have a rich, full voice. And I think, I mean, there's kind of a tonal qualities to them that are different from Martins because they're smaller, more intimate guitars than what you're talking about, which is bigger. It's got a bigger bass, and the trebles are going to be a little crispier, I think. And maybe that sits better in the mix. I'm not an expert on this that part of it, but I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
No, I think you are. I mean, it was more of an open-ended. It was just a statement more that I was looking for a response, which you gave, you using the word voice, that sort of makes it a very clear picture to me that these guitars have voices. I'm currently obsessed with my Stratocaster, and I never understood the Stratocaster voice. When I was a kid, I bought a Strat, and I just don't understand, why is this thing so clear and crisp and chimey? It didn't make any sense to me. And then for some reason now, that voice is speaking very deeply to me, and I keep reaching for the Stratocaster in that way. And I feel that instruments have that thing where they show up at a particular epoch in a player's life as the go-to thing for whatever reason. All of a sudden, I mean, even watching when Joni moved to Parker Fly guitars, just because she was having a struggle to hold the strings down on whatever she had been playing before acoustically. Like, as we age, I think our ears tune into different things. Even going back to when I asked you earlier if you were still learning, as I get older, and I sort of feel like my income potential is sort of like leveled off. And so if I get, for my own sense of that I'm making progress, I've had some of the goalposts I've moved in terms of seeing what success feels like is, okay, so I might be making the same amount of money as I was making 3 years ago, but I'm still in a job where if I'm open to it, I'm learning all the time. And I'm 49 now, and that feeling of learning is exciting, more exciting now than it was when you were a kid. When I was a kid, I mean, I was a good student, but heck, there's a million places you'd rather be than in school. Now, if I'm offered an opportunity to learn a technical skill, anything, boy, I get absolutely giddy. And I'm so grateful to have a life where I continue to learn every day, and I'm still open to that.
Yeah.
That's a gift.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah. And same here. I like a challenge. I like people asking me to do stuff that I've never done before within reason. And if I like it, gets the wheels turning, and especially if I get excited about the project, which I presume with you, if you're producing somebody, you have to be excited about Would you be able to produce somebody that you weren't really that connected to their music, or
I
could
mean,
you?
you can, because it's a craft, like you could build a guitar if you weren't connected to the artist who was going to end up playing it. Like, maybe I'm wrong. It's not, I would always choose to invest 1000% of myself at a point and be fueled by pure excitement. But that can't always be the case in life. I mean, I'm guessing it's the same for you, or is that not true?
Yeah, I like to dive in 100% in any. Yeah, I mean, if I'm making a guitar for somebody and I don't know, a lot of times I don't know anything about the person I'm building the guitar for.
Right.
So I'm really amusing myself, you know. I just make the best guitar I can, and I get to try out some of my own chops
Yeah.
and do stuff. I'm quite happy amusing myself in the shop, and then at the end I go, oh yeah, this is going to so and so, and then make sure I've checked off all the boxes of everything specifically they've asked for. But otherwise, I can kind of go nuts, experiment with woods. And here's a piece of wood in the corner that, they asked for a blue top, maybe. And so the guitar top has a big streak of something in it that I wouldn't have been able to use unless I could cover it with blue. And
Right.
so now they've got one of the best guitar sounding tops that might have not been suitable for, a non-blue guitar. So I get, that's the kind of stuff I get to have fun with.
Speaking of blue guitars, I perceive Bruce's guitar to be green. How involved was he in that green cutaway that we've been talking about? That, I feel like that guitar goes back to the early 2000s, easily to the early 2000s.
Oh, way before
I
that,
guess the late
yeah.
90s. That's right. I think he had it on the Nothing But a Burning Light tour. So that would have been
I,
actually earlier 90s.
I sort of think of it as mid 80s, but late
Okay.
80s. And that it is actually blue.
Okay, it's blue. Yep.
And he picked the color blue, which was pretty radical. He was the first guy to put blue on guitars. I know it seems crazy now, but because it seems so obvious that you could have a blue guitar, but nobody would dare paint an acoustic guitar blue. And he kind of insisted on it with other builders. I wasn't the first one to build him a blue guitar, but it turned green because it's blue on top of cedar. So if you add blue and yellow, here's your little art lesson, you
Okay.
get green.
Ah,
And the lacquer goes yellow over time. So the blue in really strong spotlight is blue,
mm,
but in a less spotlight, you see the yellow lacquer the lacquer's going yellow, the cedar, and then it turns green. And he also has an actual green guitar, which I built for somebody else, and they were selling it, and Bruce bought it from that. I help with that sale. So he does have he does have a green guitar. So
yeah.
it is actually, it started green.
I think
So
I think he told me about buying that second one from somebody else. And had that other person bought, can I get the Bruce Cockburn guitar? Is that how it worked?
pretty much,
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
He wanted a Bruce Cockburn guitar, and but he wanted it green. So and weirdly, Bruce ends up with it, which I thought was sort of
Yeah.
perfect. You just never know the journey. It's like the movie, The Red Violin.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? That's a
Oh
great
yeah.
movie because it shows the incredible journey these instruments take. I mean, I've got guitars out there that are 50 years old. I mean, that's how old are you?
I'm 49. Yeah.
See, they're older than you.
Yeah.
And so think of all the stuff you've done in your 49 years.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I do think about that, the provenance of, is that the word? That's the word, right? Provenance. Its
pro,
origin.
pro, yes,
Because
provenance.
I love buying used instruments because I'm interested in the mojo that instrument has been able to gather through its life. And again, when we were mentioning about the moodiness of guitars, and if a guitar hasn't been played, it gets particularly moody. Like, they're tools that are meant to be used. I know I grew up in the United Church, and I was touring and doing church musicals. And when you're in a church, everybody's, oh, no, don't touch the piano, don't touch the piano. And it's, of course, an instrument can be abused by somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, but instruments are tools that love to be used. They're like a horse, like that. Like a horse wants to pull that sleigh, like, so you don't have this tool and have it not be used. The instrument doesn't grow into its into full fruition, I don't think, unless it gets played. As a piece
Yeah.
of art, it's beautiful, but it's just beginning its life. That's how I would perceive it, anyways.
Yeah, I often tell clients when they get the guitar, it's the first time they play it, that's the worst it's going to sound, and it's
Right.
only going to get better. And they go to sleep. If you put it under in a case and put it on your bed, it'll go to sleep. But then I think, who was telling me this? Oh, somebody's telling me about Karen Kane, the dancer.
Yep.
Somebody interviewed her and said that when she got out of bed every morning, she could barely move. She was stiff and she had to do all these exercises to become limber. And I've always had that image in my head of a guitar, that they just go back to being a piece of hard wood or softwood, whatever it is, and they become stiff. And then you have to coax them to life again by making them vibrate. And they sound better and better and better the more they vibrate,
Huh.
which is why sometimes I tell people to put the guitars in front of a speaker if they're not going to be playing them for a while. And in fact, the story about when I made Carlos Santana guitar, it was a Christmas present, a surprise Christmas present for him from Graham Lear and Sandy Lear. And I knew he was going to pick it up, and I was nervous that he's going to get this guitar. It's not going to sound great. So before it left my house, I was living with this couple, and they were playing Christmas music. So so Carlos Santana's guitar got about a month's worth of John Denver Christmas music before it went into his hands. So I always thought if there's any John Denver influence on his music, that's because of me.
That's on you.
Yep.
Linda, that is hilarious. Well, I'm not going to keep you too much longer, but just one more image that I can't get out of my mind that I want to run by you, and then I'll leave you be, is that I feel like I saw you at a concert. It may have been a Hall of Fame
Mhm.
thing for Bruce at Massey Hall some years ago.
Yes.
So I have this image of Linda Manzer going to see a Bruce Cockburn, a Steve Fearing, a Pat Metheny, and there you are in the audience, and they pull out your instrument. And that artist is having that intimate experience and bringing great deal of joy and spiritual energy to a room. Are you wanting to stand up and say, hey, that's my instrument. I built that thing. Pat Metheny is a genius on that thing because of me. Like, I mean, you are a famous person to people in the know, but do you sit back and is it a quiet pride you have? I mean, how does that feel to see your instrument in the loving arms of somebody that the world recognizes as truly awesome and great? I mean, I can't even imagine what that connection would feel like.
It's exhilarating. The first time that really happened was Pat Metheny playing at Ontario Place First Circle.
Uh-huh.
And it was the stage was revolving around, and he was coming into view playing my guitar. I didn't know he was going to be playing it, and it's an amazing song. And I was so like a little kid, like I wanted to jump up and down. And I think I had a camera in my hand, and I was trying to take pictures, and all went wrong. But yeah, it's an incredible feeling, but it's also completely nerve-wracking because you're just expecting the guitar to explode or something, or if it buzzes, it's your fault. So you're kind of on the edge of your seat, like, oh, I hope he makes it through the song,
Yeah, it makes sense. Actually, now my image changes. I actually see, I see Houston with liftoff, and like you helped build that rocket, or you did build that rocket, and now you're watching it, and it's like this thing better get to the moon, or else it's on me. I completely understand that, but okay, I mean it's very fascinating. It's a wonderful image to consider. I mean, I do miss the old Ontario Place Forum, and I can just imagine Pat Metheny revolving around, and voila, there he is holding the instrument that you built. How many days or weeks prior to him holding it on that stage do you think you had it in your shop in your loving care?
How long did it take me to make it, you mean?
No, like between you giving it to Pat and then you seeing it on stage, how long do you think that
Oh,
was?
8 months.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know if he even had. I gave it to him, and then I didn't see him. I gave it to him in the fall, and then it was the next summer, and I didn't even know. I even bought a ticket. He'd left tickets at the box office for me. I didn't know. He didn't tell me. So I kind of weaseled a ticket out of somebody, and I got in, and I'm just sitting, in the cheap seats with everybody else enjoying the concert, and all of a sudden I could see it in the shadows. I could see the roadie. You recognize your kid, right? I
Right.
could see it. I went, oh, it's my guitar. And then and the other moment was there's a movie called Map of the World that Pat played a soundtrack on. And I went by accident, went to the world premiere of it at TIFF in Toronto. I just got a last minute ticket. Turned out it was when everybody was in the movie was in the theater. And Pat's manager was there, and Sigourney Weaver's the lead. And there's this one moment where the theater is completely silent because Sigourney Weaver's, it's a very dramatic scene. She's in a bathtub, and she's just, something horrible has just happened. And anyway, the only thing that's happening is dead silence. She's just staring, and my guitar, because Pat Metheny did the soundtrack, is playing through these incredible speakers. That's a moment when I was thinking, I'm the only one in this whole theater that knows that what everybody's listening to is tiny little guitar that I made for Pat Metheny. And I had this kind of like, it was this horrible dramatic moment, but I had this big smile on my face because I was having my own personal experience of euphoria from that. So
do you love
yeah.
Do you love them and leave them? Like, you just referred to them as your children. Like, are there some that you don't want to let go of, or do you maintain some sort of feeling like of connection to those guitars when they go into the world? Or
when I first made them, I had a hard time letting them go.
Yeah,
really hard time. And then over time, it got easier. And then I realized that they're way better off in somebody else's hands. They're going to be, and that frees me up. Once I ship the guitar off, I don't think about it too much. There's a few that I like to kind of know where they are because I'm attached to a couple of them a little bit more for various reasons. But for the most part, I'm really happy to, push the boat off the edge of the into the lake and let it float off to its new destination.
Amazing.
Bye. Good luck. See you in 20 years when you need a neck reset,
Okay, I was going to let you go there, but you just brought up neck reset.
Okay.
On my D35, it's a beautiful player below the 5th fret. You must know Kevin Bright.
Yep. Great player.
Great player. One of the best.
Amazing. Yeah.
He played that D35 and said, man, what a beauty. And he said, the intonation above the 5th fret. I said, I know it's not great. He said, but below the 5th fret, this guitar has really got something. He said, never get a neck reset on this. What's your take on that?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, the intonation might not be related to the neck reset.
Okay.
But is it hard to play past the 5th?
No. It's easy to play the whole way up.
Oh, okay. So you don't need a neck reset.
Okay.
What you need is intonation fixed.
Okay.
What you need is the saddle is in the wrong position.
Okay, there you go. That makes sense.
Yeah. There.
All right.
That'll be $25 for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, this consultancy, I snuck in a consultancy thing at the end.
Yeah, you're kind of Mr. Entrepreneurial spirit there. Good for you. Anything else? Well,
man. Okay, well, listen, now I feel embarrassed that I even went there. Goodness, we could have left it where it was. Okay.
Glad I can help.
Linda, you've been very generous. And thank you, because this has been a total nerd out for me. And I'm really glad that we've sort of recorded this chat. Thanks again for putting the extra time to get the technical stuff up and running. I really appreciate this talk. And
Hawksley, I'm such a huge fan of you. So I am so honored to be able to talk to you one-on-one like this. Thank you.
Jeepers. Look, I hope I run into you soon. Thank you so much for this chat. I'm not sure when it will be released, but we will let you know in advance. It's fantastic. I've really enjoyed the talk.
Likewise.
Good luck. And we'll see you out there somehow, somewhere.
Okay. Take care.
Bless you, Linda. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
The Stumble Forward is an Isadora Media production and is hosted by Hawksley Workman and produced by Jennifer Kavanaugh. Be sure to subscribe and follow The Stumble Forward. You can support the podcast at patreon.com/Hawksley Workman. Thank you for listening.
Stumble forward, the stumble